Okay, well, so yes, please reach out to Dr. Arbeitman with any questions and comments, and I'm sure he will be glad to be of help. So we're going to move on to our second speaker, and we have Lisa Copeland, who is the CEO of Communicate with Influence. We can see in her name that she has a lot of initials after her name, so that there are multiple things that she has done, including being a registered dental hygienist. But her business is Communicate with Influence, and she's going to speak on intentional influence, like it says there. Say it, mean it, lead it. And she's got 5 strategies to help us communicate with impact. So it's yours.
Oh, thank you. Thanks everyone for being here. And you'll hear a little bit of reference to Dr. O'Bateman's concepts as well, because I'm a true believer of if we've always done it that way, it's probably not the best way, but we kind of stick to ourselves, right? So today we're going to be talking about how to really have intentional influence with your communications. If any of you are Big Bang Theories, you'll probably recognize this. Sheldon and Penny are driving to the dentist. She's taking him to the dentist, and he freaks out because he looks over and her check engine light is on her dashboard. So next time he's in the car with her, he looks over and he sees that it's mysteriously gone. It's been covered with a black piece of tape. And did she fix the car? No. But in Penny's mind, her logic is if she can't see the gauge message, it doesn't exist. And so our strong leadership starts with intentional communication. It's the gauge that we use to reveal our impact. And in this session, we're just going to talk about intentional influence and how to make sure what we're saying actually lands and helps you lead. So we're going to talk about 5 different strategies that you can use in your conversations. And I always say to people, communication isn't a soft skill. It's the core operating system of leadership. Because if we're not good communicators, that's the foundation of everything that we do. So if you look at these 3 bullets on the slide, think about maybe a recent conversation that went sideways because your message just didn't land right, or you weren't aligned, or it wasn't clear. And if we have time, we'll talk about that towards the end during the Q&A. Because if we don't guide the conversation is going to guide us. So this is the roadmap we're going to be looking at today. And I mentioned I'm a speaker coach, so I help people develop and deliver coaching. So when I think about the structure of a conversation, I think in my mind it's very similar to developing a presentation. And we have an introduction, we have a transition, we have content, and then a call to action and an extra. The 2 most important aspects of a conversation are the intro and the extra, or your conclusion. The conclusion being number 1, because that's what people remember. That's what they're going to leave the meeting or leave the conversation thinking about. So before we dive into the strategies, I want to talk about the how the message actually travels. And there are several areas where that influence can break down. So we have the message being sent, the message being heard, and this is where Dr. Bateman referenced. The person has to be actively listening in order for the message to be heard. And I think a lot of us, we kind of spend time listening to somebody talk and we're constantly thinking about how are we going to answer instead of just slowing down and actively listening and then responding after we've heard the whole message. Then we have interpretation, reaction, outcome, and adjust and refined. The interpretation and the outcome is where assumptions, our tone, and trust either help you or hurt you. Because every step of the conversation is going to either add or erode trust in a meeting or with a one-on-one conversation. So intentional leaders have to stay aware of the whole loop, not just what we say, but how we say it and how the message is landing. So we'll break down the 5 different categories and just touch on them briefly so that you have a better understanding of the cycle or the loop of conversation. So, strong introductions are about purpose and clarity. You want to start with the outcome in mind. So, before the conversation, think about how do I want this to go? And how would I like the person to take action? Or how would I like the team to take action? So, start with that in mind and then begin with purpose, not a filler. Use confident and expectation setting openers. So, for example, if you're starting a meeting and right around this time of year, a lot of people are talking about end of year expectations. So, today I'd like to discuss the end of year expectations for everyone on the team. And that really sets you up for here's what we're going to be talking about. And then we move into strategy number two, which is intentional transitions, or I like to call them bridges. They connect our idea to our intention. And what it does is it allows people time to absorb and digest information. And so the bridge I used this morning, just when I started, the bridge I used was the word gauge. And it led you from Penny's dashboard, right? The gauge on her dashboard to the gauge that we use in leadership and how that gauge needs to be paid attention to. And a bridge can also be a phrase like, here's why this matters, or here's why this is important. Today, we're going to talk about end of year expectations for the team, and here's why this matters, and tie it to something that's relevant to what's important to the people that you're talking to. So, for example, this is going to impact our bonuses that we're going to receive next year. That's going to make people kind of pay attention, right? Any of us perk up when you hear that. With content, we want to emphasize simplicity and inclusion. So the cleaner that we are, the better buy-in we're going to have from the patient or the client or the team. And so keep it really simple. The more jargon that we use, especially with patients, we have our own language in dentistry. And the more jargon that we use, you get that deer in the headlight look with the patient, and they don't move forward because you lost them with the jargon. So try to keep the conversation simple. What is, and you guys can turn your mics on if you'd like to answer this. What's one phrase that you frequently use that you might be able to change? And I'm going to give you an example of one that I always used, and I tried to change it. So I used to say, I'm going to demonstrate how. And now I changed that to, we're going to collaborate on how to. Right. So I've made it more inclusive, and I'm including everybody that I'm talking to, and that we're all going to have input. So can you think of any phrases that you might use that you could change and tweak just a little bit that might be more inclusive for people?
I'm not sure of the phrase off the top exactly, but I would say I've been much more aware of the importance of we instead of I, that within people plus purpose, it may be that I had a certain idea or I did a certain thing, but I'm so repeatedly, I become so consistently aware that it is a we in all the project elements and everything that occurs to move us forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a tough one. Like once you realize that you have that habit of, um, I took a course many years ago on how to start a presentation, and a lot of people start with I. And if you just change that first word, it makes a huge difference to the way people pay attention to you from the very, very beginning. And so, it's tough. It's tough to change a habit that we've, made over the years. So I love that you've made it all about your business, Matthew, and we is really important to make people feel more included. And that's something that's changed probably within the last 5 or 10 years, I'd say. Right? Anybody else?
I just wanted to add something about
Yeah.
again, whether I'm doing a one-on-one presentation or I'm doing a small group or a big group, if I don't do my homework on what's important to them, this last one, my content, I have to find their problem and help solve that. I have to make sure I'm making them what's best for my audience, not for me. I'm perfectly happy standing up in front of a group and talking, and I got something to say, but I need to put them as my priority, right? So
Right.
it's the action of not I, but you.
Yeah.
And it's been a hard lesson over time to learn, but it is absolutely, I don't go anywhere to do a presentation, or if it's a new group, I find out what they're looking for and how do I help them.
Right. We've got to solve the problem. And you're exactly right. It's not about me, it's about them and the person you're
Sometimes I
having
have
the
to dig for
conversation.
a problem too. They're like, no, we're fine, everything's good. And I'm like, oh, then why am I here?
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
Well, and when
there
you ask that question, people don't tell you the truth. You really have to ask follow-up questions and really probe to find out what the true problem is. Because people don't want to admit that they're having problems and they really don't, they're not honest with you in the beginning. But the more that you probe, the more that you find, right?
tell me more about that. Tell me
Oh,
more
oh,
about
perfect.
that. Tell
Yep.
me more about that.
And using the word and instead of but, that's a big one.
Yes, and instead of no, but
Yes,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
yep. So
Did
that's
you learn that in
perfect. Thank
improv?
you.
I learned that in improv class.
I learned that through National Speakers Association. They're big on that. And there's a lot of improv people in National Speakers Association, so I'm sure that's where it came from. Anybody else? Or we'll move on. Okay, perfect. So the fourth strategy is this is where you're going to connect your influence to your action. And we want to ask for just one next step, not five, not three, not two. We want to give them just one next step because if we give people too many things, they're not going to do any of them. And so customize your call to action. And this, Christine, this is just like what you were saying, right? Really customize your call to action to their world. What's important to them? What kind of follow-up are we going to have? Or how do we how are we going to confirm alignment on this? Or are we going to do a small experiment to find out where we really need to go? But you want your call to action to be very specific. And I typically use the what, the who, and the when. So what are we going to do? Who's going to lead the charge? And when are we going to do it by? Because if you assign people something that they have steps in the process, they're much more likely to complete it. And then the follow up is super important as well. That's the step I see most people fall apart on is we get really busy and we forget to follow up with people. We forget to check in. And that's where we really need to be sure we're having that connection as leaders. The fifth thing we want to do is just wrap up the five strategies in your conclusion. And you want to recap what you talked about. And this is going to determine what people actually remember and what they're going to do. Because remember in the beginning, I mentioned this is the most important aspect of your conversation because they want to succeed and they also want to take what they've learned and apply it into their life as soon as possible. So, my challenge for you that are on the call today is think about crafting one intentional closing line that you can use this week. Like, what could you say at the end of a conversation, or what could you ask people at the end of a conversation that would help them move forward? And it has to be intentional and it has to be memorable so that they will remember it and then they will move forward on it. So I created a checklist for you, a practical takeaway. I think, Matt, are we going to put it in the chat box or
It is,
just send it out after?
yes, it is in the chat,
Oh, perfect.
and we will also send it out after.
Perfect. So it's just a reminder of the five steps that we went through. My call to action for you, because you knew I was going to give you one, is circle an area where you may need to improve. Look through the list and think about, oh, yeah, we do this great. We do this great. I think I have to really focus on working on this aspect of it. So, you eat an elephant one bite at a time. You just take one thing. And okay, tomorrow in that conversation, I'm going to finish with this, right? And so think about how you can adapt some of the information that we talked about. So we have some time for questions, and then I have one more side we'll go through and finish up. But let's take the questions first.
And before we go there, I just want to remind everybody, if you didn't see the message, please put your contact information in the chat so that we can all have a means of connecting with each other afterwards. So please do that. And so, yes, go ahead. Questions? And while people are thinking, can you go back to the earlier slide where you showed it may have been the first, well, I don't know if it was the first or second one, but where it showed the circle of
Sure.
communication going around?
Yep. Let's see. Easiest way to do this. That the right one?
That one, yes.
Okay.
And so I guess my question, and then maybe anybody else would play off of that, is in this flow or lack thereof, which we're proposing happens, that where do you see some of the biggest glitch points in this process from message sent to getting it something fully into play?
So I think the very first place it falls apart is people aren't listening. And so that the message is not heard clearly or understood clearly right from the very beginning. So we have to be sure that the message has landed, right? And so I know my husband had a conversation. He's working at the Canyons Resort, and he had a conversation with his boss through email, and she was telling him, what to wear the first day for his training, and he didn't understand what she was saying. And so he sent her back a note and said, could you please clarify? And she said it exactly the same way the second time. And he was like, I don't want to go back to her again. And so he had to call somebody else to find out the answer to the question because she didn't change the way that she delivered it. And that's a perfect example that just happened yesterday. That's why it's top of mind for
Hmm.
me.
Hmm.
But if you see, because we should be paying attention, right? When we're giving information or communicating with somebody, we should be paying attention to how we think it's being received. So if you don't think they've heard the message clearly, I will always just stop right there and say, am I explaining this well, or do I need to say it differently? And put the onus on you, not do you get that or do you understand? That's people will begin to be a little bit more offended by that.
Right.
Right? So put it on yourself. And then the other areas I see it break down is in interpretation. Everybody interpreted things differently. The way I perceive things and the way you perceive things, and we heard the exact same thing, are different. And so again, we kind of have to check in and make sure if that's where you feel like the conversation's going sideways, make sure that everybody is on the same page before you move on, right? And then they're going to have the reaction, the outcome, and the adjustment and refinement. The outcome can also go a little bit sideways too because people heard different things. So if we just check in at each stage of this loop, then we're more likely to be able to adjust and refine and get everybody hearing the exact same thing. Does
Yeah.
that help?
Yeah, no, it helps a lot, and I really appreciate that. I think this is a fantastic diagram. I
Thanks.
I love diagrams, and I think problems can occur at any point, and I kind of wanted to get your take on it because I think just a lot of times we're thinking we really did actually deliver an effective message. So even before how it was heard, we didn't even make sure we delivered a very clear message.
Right.
But I'm also thinking because of all my work with assessments, right? And to think about the style and the communication uh, ways that people respond, that what they hear, that we need to tailor more specifically, right? And I
Hmm.
think it takes a lot more responsibility on the part of the communicator than it's like I said it, right? And that was the extent of our responsibility, not were we effective in our customizing any delivery, and then did we make sure that that they heard,
Right.
right? So I think this is really good.
Yeah, and we all do it. We're in a hurry and we say something and then the person comes back and says, "No, I didn't even hear it. I didn't hear you say that, right?" And you get annoyed, but it's really our own fault because we didn't say it correctly or we didn't say it or we didn't communicate well so that the person heard the message and was able to move forward. So, I
Yeah.
always blame myself in situations like that because it usually is me.
Other comments,
Yeah,
questions?
I'll comment because I think it's so interesting, and I know you've had practice as a hygienist. We try to, thinking of the extra and making it memorable is such an important part of what we do. The number of times, no matter how many times we tell people, and we practice something called a 5-time transfer, where we literally, the hygienist tells the patient what's wrong, the hygienist tells me what's wrong, I tell the patient what's wrong, I reaffirm what's wrong, and then I bring it to the office manager who then schedules. The patient still says, "Oh, I'm fine. I'll see you in 6 months." When we were just talking about
Oh my
taking out some
gosh.
teeth, that is such a challenge that we face on a
Mhm.
day to day. What would you see as like a finishing line to that extra to really make it clear without feeling like we don't want to feel like we're salesmen, salespeople. We
Right.
don't want to feel pushy, but we want to get the point across. You've got some problems that need to be taken care of.
Yeah, and when I was in practice, we did kind of the same thing. We'd have people reiterate over and over. Each person said something different or a little bit different way. I think the end of the conversation, it usually is going to end in the administrative area, right? When you're dismissing the patient, is to reiterate what each person talked about, right? Summarize it. And that's where communication between the front and the back has to be really, really good. But when the patient is ready to leave, you'll say something like, let's schedule your next appointment with the implant specialist. I'll take care of that for you. What days are you available? Let's do that now. And then I'll contact some patients that have had the same types of procedures so you can talk to them and find out if from their perspective, not our perspective, how the implant procedure would go. I'll call you with some patient information and I'll give you their names and numbers after I've checked with them for that conversation. And then I'll call you in a week and we'll schedule your next appointment. Does that sound like something that'll work for you? And you shake your head yes as you're saying it to them, and they say yes. And so you've got them in the next three steps to move forward and put it in writing. Also tell them that you're going to send them the conversation that you had, the next steps, and how you're going to proceed from there. Back in the day before we had computers, we used to use a flow chart and we'd hand the person a piece of paper that showed every single step of the implant process because I was in implant dentistry. And so we would, every time they came in, we would check the box of, okay, this appointment's done, this appointment's done. And so creating some kind of flow in their mind so that they know how the process is going to occur, right? And also explaining a little bit of why it's so important for them to take care of their periodontal disease because it's impacting their health. Or, you make it specific for the type of office that you have, but people need visuals as well as conversation to reinforce, especially when they're hearing new information like we give them in dentistry, they have no concept and they leave and think, oh, I don't think there was anything important about what they talked about.
Mhm.
Which is
That's great.
frustrating, right?
Yeah. Beyond. Thank you.
So anybody else have suggestions for that? We all have great tips and tricks. I know that.
I'm thinking too, I mean, it's one thing in person, and we're talking in-person conversations. I'm also thinking the challenges of message sent, message heard, interpretation, reaction, all those things that happen through emails and texts. Uh, any comments on that? Any tips for those not in-person conversations?
Yeah, that's a whole different challenge because people don't listen to whole messages or they don't listen to messages at all, right? um, and same with email. We have to be very clear in our conversation. So you want to use this same kind of diagram. This is how it's going to land. So think about what's your introduction, what's your content, what's your call to action, right? You break it down into those five strategies. And just make it very simple and clear. The longer your email, the less people are going to read it. right? And so if you think about the structure of it, okay, here's my intro, it's a one-liner. Here's my bridge. This is why this is important. And then move into what you want to talk about in the email. So you follow that same way, but make it even more simple. So people can really just glance at it. And the header is really important as well, right? The header has to be related to what the conversation is going to be, or people won't open it. So yeah, that's a great question. It's a whole different ball of wax, right?
Yeah. And on text, it's even different still than I think it is in email, right?
Yes.
And how much of the time do we feel the need to maybe put an emoji in there just to try to make sure the interpretation or reaction is managed? So
Yes.
something like that.
Yeah. And texts are tricky because interpretation plays a big part. You know, how many times have you gotten a text and you've been a little offended, and then you find out it was just a misunderstanding.
Yeah,
And
no tone. You don't know the tone
right.
for sure.
You're not looking at somebody's eyes, you're not looking at their body language, you're not hearing their intonations in their voice. It's all interpretation. So text you have to be very careful in. And you also have to think about the person who's receiving the text. What kind of person are they? Because I don't get offended very easy. You know, I've got pretty thick skin, so things just kind of water off a duck's back. But if I'm sending a message to somebody that I know is highly sensitive, you have to change your delivery. I mean, I know I do because I'm much more direct, and that person could really take offense to it.
That's good. Very good. Thank you for all that. Thank you, both of you, for your contributions today. This was really good. And I thought a great combination. I always feel good at the end, right? Dory and I will talk
Oh,
afterwards.
yes.
Like that was a great combination.
Oh,
Mhm.
So,
Excellent.
yeah,
Yeah.
you guys did great. Any last comments or questions from anybody as we wrap up?
I have one, if I may. Lisa, I've never heard, I've heard many systems or walkthroughs, but you're the first to me, first time I'm hearing it, listening, that the extro is the most important portion. And I was just thinking, perhaps too, in the office, every department needs to have their extra where they're saying the same message. So you need to hear that same message of, you have a cracked tooth, you need a crown. Oh, did you hear you had a cracked tooth? So that's that extra.
right.
And you gave it such a value. I'm thinking that needs to be in my texts, my emails, my communications. So that really stood out. So I thought it's probably true for departments, from hygiene to the DA to the person scheduling. And you did catch that you have a cracked tooth. I'm just saying that because I had a cracked tooth 2 years ago, so I had to do something about it. I wasn't, but then I thought, I do not want to have problems overseas. But again, I needed to hear it a couple of times to then schedule on the same appointment. But anyway,
Right.
I appreciate
Yeah.
you saying the importance of that extra comment. So
And
thank you.
having, doing role play for handoffs from one team member to another, or one department to another.
Yes.
It's super important for you to have like an SOP document that kind of scripts things out. Not that you're going to say it exactly like that, but you want everybody saying the same thing, maybe in a little bit different ways, so that the patient hears it several different times, or the team hears it many different ways. Like Dr. Abateman was saying, or Abateman, sorry, I got it right the first time, wrong the second. You just have to keep repeating because people don't catch it. They don't hear it, and sometimes they don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Well, please, everybody, come back next month, second Tuesday in January. Dr. Jerry Curatola. Come back, invite friends, invite colleagues, and look forward to seeing you then. Have a Merry Christmas, everybody.
Thank you. You too.
Yeah.
Happy holidays.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.